Right, I'm gonna do a little off-grid in Alaska, do-it-yourself beginner's guide here for people. You know, I get a lot of questions about what does it take to be off the grid. A lot of interest in that, and you know, I think the biggest part I think the biggest part for people that are just starting or wanting to do it is just to start small. You know, it's quite the learning curve if you're going to do it, you know, with going big. And if you have the resources to go big and be able to just to uproot your whole family and do it all right, and you've done all the research for it and you're comfortable doing it, more power to you. This is just more for that kind of like that single guy or girl that are coming up to Alaska. They want to go off the grid. And they want to know how to do it, how to live cheaply, what do you need, what to look for. And I think off the grid and DIY just kind of go hand in hand, because everything that you're going to do is for yourself. You're not going to be able to call in a mechanic. You're not going to be able to call in a carpenter. You're not going to be able to just have those services, you know, get fuel delivered, get your trash picked up. You do it all yourself, and that's part of the lifestyle and the way it is. And sometimes it's tiring, sometimes it's taxing, sometimes it's a lot. But I think if you start small and you go for the basics, it's a good way to really get comfortable doing it. And you know, that goes for, you know, you're changing your own oil in your generators, you're cutting your own firewood, you're hauling your own water, you're maintaining your own equipment. All those things take time and some skills, but the less that you have of each, the more manageable it is. So I think I'm starting small. I'm going to head down to my cabin and just kind of have a look at my small cabin and the ease of that. And what do you need? What are the basics? Water, heat, shelter. And how do you get those things, and how do you pick those things? I think one of the things that is really important is land and location. And are you going to pick a spot that's on the road system or off of the road system? You know, on the road system, you're talking about a lot cheaper logistically to build. Maybe a little bit more expensive for the actual land, but a lot cheaper to build. Logistics are a lot cheaper compared to somewhere like where we live that's fly-in only, and on a waterway. One of my things is, if I was going to do this again, is being on a waterway, somewhere that has fish, somewhere that has that resource of having a river close by, I think is huge to me. Whether it's that or the ocean, it's just or a big lake, some sort of waterway that gives you the availability to be able to travel and access different parts, whether it's in the winter or the summer. I think would be a big thing for me as far as doing that. And you know, Alaska Native people and indigenous people all over the world based a lot of places off of river systems and a lot of lakes and oceans and coastal. There's a reason for that. And if you're going back to the basics, I think that would be something I would look for, is something with a body of water or close to a body of water, because there offers so much resources, not just the water, but fish, transportation, all those things. So that would be a huge thing for me. And then good ground. You know, you want to be building on solid ground, not a whole bunch of permafrost, not wet. And I think especially when you come to Alaska, you'll see a lot of ground a lot of areas that are for sale, and those places that are cheap and stuff like that have permafrost, standing water, you know, places that are just really tough to build on and really tough to work, really tough to garden in, really tough to just, it's really tough ground. And I think that finding some place with some good ground, limited permafrost, some sort of rock, or ground that's somewhat predictable in what it's going to do, I think is a huge thing too. So by water, having a place with solid ground, south facing for sun, then having some firewood or trees or some sort of timber on your land is huge also. I mean, if you could have a place that has, you know, whether it's standing dry or green, spruce, white spruce is what you're going to get in Alaska, and especially in interior Alaska, what I'm familiar with, that's going to be a big deal, you know, to be able to harvest your own timber, to use a sawmill, to be able to build a log cabin or a frame cabin, but using your own lumber. I think that that's a big advantage of trying to find a place that has that. You're going to pay for it initially, I think, but one ground that has big timber on it is usually pretty good ground. And then you're able to use that timber to be able to build, and I think that that's another really good thing. So those things would be my basics, and then go out to the cabin here and kind of have an idea of what we're gonna what you're gonna need, and what I look at, and the size of your cabin, and you know, just the little things, wash basins, and you know, living without electricity and being able to do that. You could have a Honda 2000 or a small generator like we do out there, and that's fine. But we're also set up to be able to run without a generator, to be able to have oil lamps, wood stove, outhouse, river there for water, and you could live for a long time like that. You live forever like that, as long as you could produce the food. So those are the basics, and I think that it's gonna be fun just to see that and kind of put that in perspective, especially for people that are looking to having that dream of living off the grid sometime, living off the grid in Alaska, which is great, man. That's what it's about. It's about chasing those dreams. It's about getting out there, being adventurous, and taking it on. But information like this is important, and I know there's a lot of people looking for it, so that's cool. Well, I come back down to the cabin here to talk about off the grid living a little bit, and it just reminds me of why we do it. You know, it's the living on the land, or just being there when stuff happens. And those wolves came back. It looked like a whole pack, and started digging stuff up right here in front of the cabin. It's kind of odd. They must be really comfortable here. There's 4 or 5 of them. I seen their tracks out on the lake, digging up stuff all over in here. Nice ride over. Nice sunny day. I'm gonna get a fire going in here. What I like to do is, when I get to the cabin, is get the fire going, and get the cabin warming up, and then have enough daylight where you have a little something to do when I get here. Go get a load of wood, or pick my hole out for my ice, for my water out in the river. It's just something to keep you warm, I guess, while you're letting the cabin warm up is the big thing. So keeping yourself comfortable. It's a great thing about, you know, living off grid. And one thing that I always think about is wood stoves, you know, and having firewood available. I think that that's a key to me in the life that we live, is that, you know, some way to heat your home, and there's just nothing better than wood heat. Dries stuff, you know, it's a resource that you could go out and get, and I think that it's super important to be in a place to where you have firewood at least close to you or accessible to you, and you have firewood, you know, an outhouse, and then clean water, or water that's you could boil even to drink with a river or lake close by. it's really the start. That's really the basics of survival, and then you're just going to start thinking about food and what you're going to do to preserve your food. And I guess one of the big things about living in the Arctic and places where it is cold is that you have that ability to keep your food frozen, which is a real plus when it comes to living off the grid, because you're able to preserve stuff through these winter months. But that cold also really can help you store food when you don't have a big battery bank or electricity like freezers and stuff to be able to keep your food. You could always just freeze your food in an outdoor cache, or even in the late fall months, early spring months, making yourself something in the ground to get your food close to permafrost. Fun for people to be able to take these different little tidbits from different people that do it different ways. It's not the right way or the only way, but it's just the way that I've learned, and I've spent enough time doing it now that, ooh, that fire feels good on my hands. Ooh, I was flying that drone coming out here. My hands got cold. So it usually takes about, I don't know, 2 or 3 hours to get this place. 2 hours to get this our cabin up to temp. This cabin's 12 by 20. It's got a 12-12 pitch roof. That's what allows us to be able to put that loft up there for the kids to stay in. There's some pluses and some minuses for going with a high pitch roof like that. Pluses, you gain more room, more free room for storage and stuff. The negative is it's not quite as warm as if you were going to go with an 8-foot ceiling, truss ceiling with a bunch of insulation in there. If you're going to go to a real cold place, you see like Johnny Rolfe, who was on Life Below Zero with me, in his place like that, where you're in a 50, 60 below area, you're going to go even smaller with even a lower roof to really keep that heat in and be able to stay warm. So it just depends on your climate, how many people you have, how many people you're trying to live off the grid with. But for us and kids, going with that 12-12 pitch roof just gave us a little bit more area. We're in a cold area of the state, but not 50, 60 below constantly. A lot of 20 below, 15 below, 0. We get more wind and stuff, but that ambient temperature usually doesn't dip down to 40, 50 below, but for only maybe a week or two out of the year. So that's just the difference in climate that you have to pay attention to when you start going off the grid and thinking about how you want to do it. Either way, energy efficiency is really important on, how much wood you want to burn and how hard is it going to be for you to heat this building. I think that that's something to really consider, and think about how you want to do that, and how much wood you want to have to cut, and how much time you want to have to put into heating your place. Like, go and live in a small place like this. I might only burn 3 or 4 cords of wood, in the coldest parts of winter, where at our big house, I burn close to 10 or 12 cords of wood. That's why we always get those big rafts in the spring with driftwood, and then split it and stack it, because the only way I can really keep up with burning that much wood is by getting it in large quantities. When you're living remote, you can't have somebody drop off a logging truck full of wood to you. You're hauling almost all your wood in sled loads, in compared to truck loads, which is a huge, huge difference. So it's something to really consider when it comes to going off the grid, of how much wood you want to burn and how efficient your place is going to be. One thing with our place here is just the erosion, and being this close to the river, that's something else I think that would be a key learning thing for me. And we can't really avoid it in our area. When you are next to the river, it's just so flat. But if I was going to look for a place, and I was a single guy, I would definitely consider, I'd want to be by the river. But if there's somewhere where I could be close to a hill, where I could just be up off the river enough to where you don't have to worry about flooding, and you aren't worrying about erosion, that river constantly washing the bank away is a super important thing also. So obviously no running water here. I got my Honda generator. I got my Honda generator in here. You know, I'll have to let that warm up before I even try to start it. It's one of those things where not even worth it. You go a whole night without starting it. It's all right. Just let that thing get warm before you start jerking on the cord. It's nothing but problems. They're never going to start when they've been sitting in the cold like this. Just bring the cabin up to temperature and then go from there. Got my wash basins up here. Those are for doing dishes. This one's for washing your hands. Those are key, just simple things that you always have when you're living off the grid. With no running water is just a lot of pails, a lot of ways to pack water, 5-gallon buckets, and then a lot ways to boil water, whether it's a galvanized bucket or pots like this. It's you got to be able to boil water, melt down snow, melt ice, and those are the things that you're going to need. One thing I like to do right now also is go get a good chunk of clean ice, like, you know, a block that's like 8 by 8 or 10 by 10 or however big it is, but nice clear ice. Bring it in here, put it in one of those pots, and then in the morning I could have that fresh, make coffee with ice water, and that's no better coffee. So I always look forward to that and being able to get some ice to be able to make coffee out at the cabin. So yeah, go have a look outside while this place warms up. So right down in there is where I usually put a hole and in the ice in the river and get water. Have my sawmill out here. That's what I built the steam bath with. This house is obviously, this is a stick frame, meaning with 2x6 is how I built this, with Tyvek vapor barrier and just plywood for the outside. You know, usually you would plywood it and then put siding on it, but out here where we are, it's just the expense of getting siding out here and different stuff like that is, it's, you know, you're living pretty minimal, and it's minimally money-wise too. You're trying to make a lot of stuff happen with not a whole bunch of money, and so sometimes it's just everything has to be really practical. So yeah, I got my batteries here. Those are two 6-volt batteries that make 12 volts from my 12-volt inverter there. One of the things I'm doing out here is I gotta make sure that those batteries stay charged in the wintertime, or else they'll go dead. So charge those with the generator. Solar's not so much right now out here. You see the sun's trying to shine on them, but it's just not high enough. So gotta keep the batteries charged up. Do that with the generator, or else they'll go bad. This is a really important thing right here. This is a steam bath or a sauna, whatever people want to call them. But it's important to have these steam baths. This is where you're going to wash up. This is where you're going to shower. This is where you're going to get warm. And got my wood in here, and wood stove, and you bring in your bucket of water, 5-gallon bucket of water. You let this place warm up, and you can come in here and just and get cleaned up, wash up hot, squeegee out the floor, and you're good enough. But having that place to really warm up and wash up, take care of yourself is important. Well, go check on the cabin and then see if it's warmed up. Have to go out on that river, find some thicker ice. I hope I answered most everybody's questions on what I would think is a good place to start, an off-the-grid place. Being close to the water, having good natural resources, good ground, and those are the main things. And then you go from there. And it's a great way to live. It's fun. I know it's kind of trending right now, but this is the way that we've lived for a long time, and it's takes a lot of work. It's not always glorious, and a lot of quiet days and a lot of tough days where you can't figure stuff out, but at the end of it, when you're able to sit out here on the deck, listen just to the quiet, smell that wood smoke coming out of the chimney, put in a little bit of work, it's a good way to live. Thanks for watching. Talk again. Life's good on the Noco River. Ooh, I like that. Warm.